Hello everyone, I'm CrypticFox, and today we're leveraging the automation update to make a self-sustaining bathroom that works on its own cycle of water that you don't have to keep supplying. Having a bathroom or an outhouse is one of the earliest required things you'll have in the game. When you start off a new game, within the first cycle, your duplicants are going to have to use the washroom. And it's nice to be able to get something set up that allows the duplicants to do that in a clean way and also lets you help keep your colony clean and relatively clutter-free. The easiest way to do that starting off initially is just with the outhouses. Use an outhouse, and then you can also use the wash basin so that you can make sure your duplicants stay relatively germ-free. And if you enclose all of this in a room that's no larger than 64 tiles, it contains at least a toilet and a wash station, and then nothing industrial in there, then you can actually have an additional stress relief by having your duplicants go to the bathroom. The challenge with having this is you often need to have a compost pile as well in order to clean out the outhouses, and then your wash basins are also going to produce polluted water. You can make a system that uses a compost pile to clean out the outhouses, or a place to dump out the polluted water from the wash basin, but the easiest way to do that is just to trap a hatch in your little bathroom, and that makes it a largely self-sustained feature. You'll have to still deliver water to your wash basin, but in the early game, this is the easiest way to make your bathroom as manageable as possible. And once you get past that early game, you're moving on to the mid-game, the later game, where you're starting to get access to some refined metals, and you want to use some automation. Maybe you want to leverage the lavatories, but you don't want to have to keep feeding it fresh water all the time. That's when you can start looking at doing something different. Having a system that's based on the lavatories and the sinks has a couple of advantages. Number one, you don't have to deliver any water to the actual sinks as opposed to the wash basins. You can just set them up with a piping system that feeds the water in, and then your duplicants don't have to spend their time going to do it. Your duplicants can get nice and clean, and there's basically no maintenance for you to handle it. The lavatory also has the benefit of generally being cleaner. It's more efficient because you don't have to have duplicants go to clean out the outhouse because you're not using the outhouse. You can also supply it with a supply of water. It tends to produce less germs, and overall it's a little bit easier to manage and maintain once you get one set up. Showers are a nice feature that you can include in your bathroom that help de-stress your duplicants. Something about going and getting clean and having a nice shower, even when the water is not heated up to a particular temperature, seems to do a lot to help reduce their stress, so you can include that as part of your bathroom. The challenge with these items is they all produce wastewater, and that wastewater has to go somewhere or you're going to need to clean it, and you have to continue to feed water into the system in order to handle it. But instead what you can do is set up a closed system that actually contains all the water within a single loop and just cycles it round and around. Now the lavatory and the wash station and the shower, they're all going to produce germs or germ water, and that germy water, even though it has germs in it, can still be used to clean. This is something that is active in the game right now, but it might ultimately change going forward. So at the moment, you can use water that contains germs in your lavatory, sinks, and showers, and even though the duplicants are washing with that germy water, they'll leave without any germs on them. At some point in the future, that might change, and then you'll have to consider maybe changing this whole cycle around again, but in the meantime, it does work. I did something similar like this previously with a bathroom setup, and the biggest challenge was that in the wastewater system, the wastewater that comes from the lavatory is actually more than the fresh water that it consumes. If we take a look in the plumbing at the lavatory, you can see that it consumes 5 kilograms of water per use, but produces 11.7 kilograms of water per use. So when you have a closed system that doesn't have any water flowing into it or flowing out of it, what will happen is the wastewater will back up to the point where the pipes will become completely filled with wastewater, and then the duplicants will no longer be able to use any of these facilities. Prior to the automation update, that was a real problem. We had no way to get around that. However, we do have an option now where we can make use of the liquid shutoff in order to control the amount of wastewater that we have in the system and ensure that we keep the system alive. This bathroom system is a little bit excessive. I only have 6 duplicants, so this one's really large and doesn't need to be this big. But let's go through building one out from scratch. I'm going to be doing this in the debug mode just for the speed and simplicity of putting it together, but everything I build here can ultimately be done in the game itself. I only have 6 duplicants in this colony, so I'm going to make the bathroom a little bit smaller than it was, but we start off in the plumbing section and you grab your lavatories. The lavatories, it's best to have positioned the farthest away from the door, simply because you want to be able to set up sinks for them to wash their hands with, but you don't really want them to wash their hands every time they take a shower because they're all going to be clean. So in your medicine section, you'll have access to your 2 sinks, rather the sink and the wash basin. In this case, we're going to use 2 sinks in this bathroom, and we'll set them both to direction right, so the duplicants will only wash their hands after they've gone to the bathroom and they're leaving the room. Now again, I'm using debug mode, so these are all being built instantly. It takes a little bit longer in an actual game, however, again, all these things can be built when you're playing the game normally. I also want to include some showers in here. This is all that's really required to make this room a bathroom. We could just close this off with a door. However, I'd like to have showers in here because I'd like to have my duplicants having the opportunity to at least get a little bit clean when they feel like it. We want to leave space for the door at the edge, so we're going to put 2 of them here. And I'm just leaving gaps in between to put a little bit of artwork so it's not, maybe not quite as ugly. To finish off the room, we'll put on a pneumatic door on the end to allow gases still to pass through. And I'm also going to use airflow tile again to just make sure that we don't block any flow of oxygen and whatnot in and out of this room. Checking the room overlay, we can see that now meets the conditions. It's within 64 tiles. It has the lavatory and the sink contained within it, and there's no mechanical parts in here. So this does qualify as a bathroom space, or the latrine space rather, which will give us an added stress relief bonus. Let's throw in a little bit of artwork so we get that. Make sure we're benefiting from that stress relief as much as possible as well. It's not really the prettiest room in the building. All of these are going to need to be connected to a water supply. The intake for each of these items is on the bottom, so we can run all of those through the floor. And we'll just have it spaced out as such. And connect it that way. I want the pipe to kind of extend out a little bit farther than I might necessarily need it to, because we want to be able to store some additional water within the pipe once it's clean, and to ensure that we have a consistent supply of water through the system, throughout the system. We're also going to use liquid piping to do piping for the wastewater that's going to come out of each of these items. All these will produce polluted water, and that will go down below, and we're going to run this all through a water purifying system. So in refinement, we have the water sieve, and we're going to place that just above this little door that's right here. Now, I placed this door here specifically so that we have an additional step in automation we can use if you really want to. This is completely optional. And in this case, I've already trapped some hatches below here using the creature locator, so it's maybe a little bit different in your own facility, and you might want to just have your duplicants clean up the waste that comes out of the water sieve. So connect those in by pipe, and we're ready to go. Now we basically just need to prime the pump with some water, and we're also going to need some power here in order to run the water sieve. So if we run the wire into our water sieve, that gives it the power to work. And with an injection of water into our closed system coming from this pump that's located down here, we'll be able to supply water for everything that we need in here. We've connected the water pump from our water basin to our closed system, and it's now primed the pump, so we basically have this whole pipe all filled with fresh water. If the duplicants continue to use the facilities, ultimately what will happen with the lavatory is it will produce excess wastewater that will back up in the piping here, so that the freshwater side of the pipe will be completely filled, and the polluted water side will be completely filled, and no one will be able to use any of these things anymore because there's just no more movement of the water. Even though we have a water purifier in here, it just gets so that there's too much volume in our closed system. This is where the automation can come in handy. So if we look in plumbing, there's a little item called the liquid shutoff. That's an item that can be controlled through some of the automation pieces. If we set this shutoff valve just below the freshwater output from our water purifier, we can connect that into the plumbing system. It's causing a little bit of a backflow at the moment as water's flooding into this section of the pipe. But we're going to disconnect our connection over here. So that we've severed our bathroom system from the main flow of water. Once the water goes through the purifier, it comes out fresh on the other side. The issue is only going to be that it's still going to contain germs. So we're going to have to do something with that water. But the bigger problem is just that the polluted water is going to back up and the whole bathroom will stop working. With the automation upgrade, they added a clock sensor that's going to solve the problem for us. This clock sensor will connect directly to the shutoff valve. And what we'll do with the clock sensor is tell it that once it gets to 85% of the day, until it gets to 100% of the day, which is sort of the end of the cycle, we want this valve to open up. And what this valve will do is it'll allow any overflow of water that's come out of our water sieve to be drained off of the system so that we don't have a continued backup. So this flow of water I'm going to send off and connect it to this outgoing flow of water that's headed upwards. So as you can see, as the duplicants continue to use the facilities, this pipe is now completely filled with fresh water. The sieve is filling up with polluted water, and now we're starting to get a backup of polluted water on the other side. It's not so bad if they only use the shower and the sink because it consumes and produces the same amount of water, so it'll just continue to cycle around. But as they use the lavatories more, this polluted water will continue to build up, and we want to get rid of the excess. Based on this timer, when the cycle gets to 85% of the day, it's going to open up this shutoff valve, and the excess water from this section of the pipe will flow out and join the rest of the flow headed outward. We've hit the point of the day where at 85%. This valve is open. You can see the fresh water is going to flow outward now and rejoin the flow of water going through the remainder of the pipe. This will keep our closed system with the bathroom sustained so that we can continue to run the water right through the water sieve and keep it clean, and we never have to inject any more water into this closed system because we're just continually running the same water that we already had in there and then just taking off any of the excess. This was the primary problem I had with the setup when they made the change to the lavatory, was that it would back up, and there wasn't a convenient way to do this in any kind of controlled way that wouldn't drain all of the water out of the system over time. But this method allows you to just take out little bits of water, only the excess amounts each time, so you keep the right amount in there. The water sieve does a good job of cleaning it from polluted water into clean water, but you can see that the water that's flowing through here is all germy. And even the water that we're sending up through this piping has germs in it, but that's okay, because we're actually just sending it to the electrolyzers, and the electrolyzers aren't affected by the germy water that you send into them. In this case, we're sending germs that are largely food poisoning based, and food poisoning germs, they don't survive in oxygen anyway. So when they get produced through the electrolyzer into this environment of fresh air, they're ultimately going to die off. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, even though the germy water is being used to clean them, the duplicants will start with germs after using the lavatory. They'll clean their hands in the sink with the germy water, but they'll still leave with no germs on them, even though the water they were using was bad. Again, this might change at some point in the future because the game is still under development, but it does work at the moment. The water sieve, as it's cleaning the water, does produce a little bit of waste in the form of polluted dirt. In this case, there's 28.9 kilograms of polluted dirt just sitting here. Now, if you have a compost set up somewhere, your duplicants can come and clean this up and send it off. But you could use this another way and just feed some hatches with it. This is where you could use another piece of automation. I set a little mechanized airlock underneath the water sieve, and we can connect that up with a piece of automation as well. So again, if we use the clock sensor, we'll set it here, and this time we're going to set the clock sensor to go between 85% and 86% of the day. So basically when the duplicants are headed off to bed is ultimately where we want to use this. And then we'll connect that to the mechanized airlock using the automation wire. So now what will happen is when we get to the 85% of the day, which should be very soon, the door will open, it will drop the polluted dirt down below, which will feed the hatches. They'll destroy it for you, and they'll leave this space clean. You could also trap hatches in this area as well. However, the water sieve does produce heat. It's only currently at 29.5 degrees Celsius. But that is slightly above the preferred comfort level of the hatches, and at some point it could conceivably get hot enough in here that it makes the hatches too uncomfortable. The hatches will survive up to the point where the temperature is somewhere around 70 degrees Celsius, so you won't necessarily have to worry about killing them unless you get this really hot and you're using it in a large-scale operation. But for smaller scale, I'd largely just separate it because it was convenient to keep the hatches in a different area. So this is your self-sustained bathroom using automation. That automation we're largely just using to control an overflow to ensure that we don't back up water in the system, and also to control the little door that drops the food down for the hatches. The only thing that the duplicants will have to supply here is sand that will go in the water sieve over time. With the new tools that they have in place to get refined metals, which you have to use for automation anyway, you can produce additional sand, so it's no longer the same amount of limited resource that it used to be. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you'll get some use out of it. I'm, as always, CrypticFox. I'll see all of you next time.